All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. This is the first panel in the Now panel series, and we're going to be focusing on the topics of environmental justice and intersectional environmentalism. This is just part one of a series of 4 panels that will be focused on educating teens and other youth on climate change. And yeah, so the terms environmental justice and intersectional environmentalism kind of describe movements that have existed for a long time, but are getting a little bit more attention in the recent media, just as relating to both the Black Lives Matter movement and the general shift towards looking at the racial injustices and general injustices that our society enabled, and also the shift towards looking at our impacts on climate change a little bit more. So environmental justice is kind of a work towards the fair treatment of everyone, including marginalized communities and everyone else, in regards to how environmental laws, regulations, and everything are created. And this movement is something that's trying to work towards a reality of more equality and a more sustainable future. So for your reference, my name is Ellen Kim. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a sophomore in high school. I've been working to kind of educate other youth about climate change for about a year or two now, and I'm currently working with the San Mateo County Office of Education and Office of Sustainability's Youth Climate Ambassador, or YCA program, to create these panels, and I'm going to be your moderator today. So our first panelist, who you should be able to see on the stream, is Anaya Butler, a youth climate activist, poet, and spoken word artist that lives in the Bay Area. She's currently working with Youth of the Apocalypse, which is a youth-led organization that focuses on lifting up other youth and activists of color to fight for a better, more sustainable future. And Anaya, it would be great if you'd like to introduce yourself, say hi, anything like that.
Hi, I'm Aniya Butler. I'm 14. I'm from Oakland, California, and I'm with Youth versus Apocalypse. YVA is basically a group of activists and organizers, fighting for a sustainable future. And we also have like an intersectional analysis on the climate and social justice movement. And so lately, we've been really emphasizing that and really trying to put that into our work.
Great, thank you. And I'm definitely going to be asking you a little bit more about your work through YVA in a bit, but I just wanted to introduce our second panelist, Teron McGrew. She is the Climate Justice Co-Chair at the San Francisco Bay Area Climate Reality Project chapter, the chairperson for the District 1 Community Development Block Grant, and the creator of the Climate Reality Bay Area Climate Justice Salon series. And she's also the CEO of her own consulting company, among other things. She's traveled with former U.S. Vice President to Georgia and Minnesota to educate and train other activists. So, Teron, if you wanted to say hi, introduce yourself a little bit more, that would be great as well.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to be on this wonderful panel with Anaya, who is an Oaklander. I am a native of Oakland, California, and I do serve as the co-chair of climate justice for the San Francisco Bay Area Climate Reality Project. My purpose is to bring forth and advance the mission of former United States Vice President Al Gore and President Ken Berlin of the Climate Reality Project, and bringing frontline communities to the forefront of the climate change and justice movement. So thank you.
Yeah. And just a heads up to everyone that you can ask questions to both of them or one of them in the live chat that should be on the YouTube video. And quick note before you get started, just on those questions. None of the panelists or myself will be commenting or answering any questions on any one presidential candidate or political campaign during this panel. Just as an umbrella thing, if we receive any questions about that, we most likely won't be answering them. So let's get started with some of the discussion and some questions that I had for you guys. Teron and Anaya, would you guys like to tell me like how you define the terms environmental justice and intersectional environmentalism and kind of what those ideas mean to you?
Okay. Nalia? Uh,
Hey, yeah. To me, environmental justice means so much. I think it's way more about the environment. I think it's also about the people that live in the environment, the animals that live in the environment, really just living organisms that live in the environment. And so when we reach environmental justice, I feel like it should be healthy for the environment, but also healthy for the marginalized communities, which have been really affected by private corporations who are basically investing in the destruction of our planet. And so to me, it means living in a sustainable environment, but also being sustainably healthy as a person and as a living thing.
well, I believe that environmental justice is righting the wrongs that have historically created a community unconstitutionally that has been impacted the most. And most of those communities are people of color, in particular African Americans, where we live in less infrastructure areas of the urban core. And historically, we have been denied access to economic opportunities to better ourselves because of policies that kept us and was designed to keep us in these areas. The intersectionality of environmentalism is really understanding and looking at the lens, the critical lens that made those communities that are most impacted by climate change, and looking at those connections to create the right that we are all connected to the earth. We are a part of this human species and world, a part of an ecological system that we all have to participate in. And so the justice of that is recognizing that. And that's that intersectional lens of looking at race, gender, class, gender, and how it makes us a part of that whole ecological system and how we're all equal. So, looking within those lenses and bringing forth a more equitable lens in the world that we're moving forward into, which is a sustainable world that requires equity, it requires justice, it requires us looking at diverse populations, people of color, indigenous people, and all. So, all of us coming together in an equitable form and fashion and looking at how we're going to drive and move forward. But it does take an individual lens of an individual to look within that intersectional environmentalist justice narrative lens in creating a better future.
Right, great. Thank you guys both so much. I kind of am wondering, I think both of those definitions were really amazing and inspiring, and I think that all of those things are very important. And I was kind of wondering how you apply those ideas into your work and kind of the things that you're doing in the field of environmental justice.
Well, I'll just say that I am very passionate about the planet Earth. And I'm very passionate about my community, in particular, Oakland, California. I am a native and I am living and breathing gentrification. While it's happening in the urban core, it is happening all over the world. So I always like to just start with just a small story of why I do the work that I do. I have an interest in my great grandmother's farm in a small community in Crockett, Texas. And in that community, they have a gym that turns into a natural disaster center. And when I went to this small community of 6,000 people, I recognized that they were better prepared for a natural disaster than the urban core. That was the stimulus and catalyst for me to come back to Oakland because I am a product of Oakland. I was born and raised. My family was a part of helping African Americans move and integrate into neighborhoods that they were prohibited to live in. And so housing is very important. That is my background. Well, the environment is a major part of that. It makes up everything. If you don't have stable housing and you don't have clean air and access to clean water and safe housing, then you're not going to be the best productive person. I have come back and have been working with the West Oakland Environmental Indicator Project with my elders, actually, and community leaders who just won an NAACP, the Seed Award with NOMA. And because I am interested in the full development of community, I decided and was invited by Mrs. Margaret to come in and look at how the Howard Terminal, which is a stadium development, would actually be developed in West Oakland, in particular, the community building agreement. So I've been working in that capacity on a cohort, not on the steering committee, but I have not only been able to be in this equitable cohort of looking and working with my peers to see how do you bring a stadium to a less infrastructured community and make sure that the residents are actually getting what they need in this community building agreement. So a part of the environmental cohort, I've been going and working and with my peers and people in residents in the community where they're talking about what they want. And in that, what I have found is that I'm learning, they're learning, and we're being taught by Miss Margaret and by Brian the learning process of community-oriented solutions. So that's the work that I've been doing. It's been really beneficial learning. We're all learning and we're all growing. And that's where it takes place. And that's where it's shaping and taking form.
Right, yeah. And Mr. Greer, you mentioned community-oriented solutions, I believe was the term. Could you kind of expand a little bit more on like what that is and what some other examples of focusing on these communities in our solutions and the things that we do to help the environment?
Okay, yes. In this particular example of serving in the environmental cohort for the community building agreement, we have our leaders, Mrs. Margaret and Brian, who are a part of the planning. And I like to give credit to Veronica Cummings, who works for the city of Oakland. This was her master's project on community building agreements. So we're building and expanding upon that. But in this cohort where we go and we meet on Saturdays, and it's in a group called the West Oakland Benefits of Equity, we talk about what we've come up in our cohorts. Like, I'm interested and I brought forth, okay, resilient hubs. What does that look like? What does that mean to bring that concept to West Oakland? So going to the cohort on Saturdays, I can talk about and expand on that, but within the process of understanding that it's all coming together and it's all being fleshed out. Whereas we can have pros and cons about it, we can have more resources availed to it, but understanding that first and foremost, the community building agreement is taking shape. So once how it's taking shape is through the idea, just the idea of a resilient hub or community owned grid. And from that, we all then come together and we talk about it, the processing of the pros and cons, adding resources, me injecting and seeing a gym in a rural community built with FEMA that turns into a natural disaster center. How would that look in the urban core? Well, then we say, okay, let's expand on that. Well, what does that mean? Well, a library can act as a resilient hub. Some of the facilities in the area could serve as a resilient hub. What does that mean? Does that mean it means air conditioning on a hot day like today here in Oakland? Having the residents know that they can go there. People who have health conditions can go and get um, be cooled, but they may also need other survival tools. So in that, we begin to see the expansion of ideas and resources that are pulled together that's taking shape. And what happens and what I have learned through Miss Margaret and Brian is that the process is continuously happen. So today, as we are creating this panel, you'll be creating something else tomorrow. And you just continue to expand, and that's a part of the process. So you're taking shape in community processing, of processing with all people coming together, but most importantly, with an equitable lens. That how will all the residents better their lives, their situations, their neighborhoods, their living conditions in this new process. So it's just a growth and learning. I might think that my idea is great and someone may not think it is, but then the process of that coming together and forging to take shape to a end goal, and that is a resilient hub.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for sharing about your work. It seems really important and really amazing. Anaya, would you be willing to kind of share a little bit about your work at Youth v Apocalypse and kind of what you guys are doing there?
Yeah, I've been part of YVA for a year now. Before becoming a climate activist or an activist in general, I was a poet and a spoken word artist. I've been doing poetry since I was 8 and spoken word since I was 10. And so, really, those two forms of telling the truth have really pushed me and kind of inspired me to be an activist and to, do things like this. And so, lately, YVA, we've been really trying to put that intersectional analysis of the climate and social justice movement in our work, especially right now, because it's just so important right now with all the stuff that's going on. And we feel like it's really important to educate other teens and people our age to know about this stuff. And so, we think it's important for people to be educated about this because for years now, Indigenous people have been fighting against climate change. And, climate justice is kind of thought of as this white led thing. And it's really not, it's just that's how the media kind of portrays it to us. And so that's why YVA, one of our biggest goals and missions is to uplift the voices of marginalized communities, Black and Brown communities, because we find it really important. And so lately, we've been doing that. We've been uplifting the voices of youth, and we've been trying to get people involved to organize within their communities, but also stay safe because we are in a pandemic, and just doing little things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That also seems really amazing and really interesting. And I think that the work that you're doing with Youth v Apocalypse is really important. I guess kind of a question kind of relating back to environmental justice. I was just wondering if you guys had any examples of some ways that this problem, I guess, impacts marginalized communities, especially like within the Bay Area.
Adalia, would you like? Yes.
Yeah, sure. As a person of color, as a woman, as a youth person, there are many ways, especially in the Bay Area right now. And some of them are small and some of them are big, but it's really just looking at the root and the intersectionality because, every year is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. Oakland has horrible heat right now, and a lot of people say, "Oh, you guys have the best weather," but it's not really normal for us to have this type of weather. And as climate change is getting worse, different things are changing as little time. But soon these changes will be humongous changes, and we'll be seeing radical changes just happening in our communities. And so, people of color, private corporations put their polluting buildings in communities, and so people of color are more likely to have lung diseases like asthma and lung cancer, and just having prohibits like me, I have asthma. And so lately that has been like sort of a trouble for me and been holding me back from something, especially as a younger child. Like when I was 5 and 4, it was really hard to just live with that and not do as many things as other children were allowed to do. And so just looking at things like that and see how gentrification is affecting, especially in East Oakland and West Oakland, and just seeing how all of these things that, don't necessarily relate to the nature and climate change, but also relate to the things that are fueling it: white supremacy, colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy. And so just really looking at the root of climate change is really important for YVA and for myself.
Right, yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I was kind of wondering if we could kind of relate this to the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of the importance of highlighting Black, Indigenous people of color, all of their voices. Do you guys have any comments on like how that relates to environmentalism and how that relates to this movement in particular?
Well, I like to say that I think that Black Lives Matter is extremely important in this whole climate change, climate justice equation, as it is in everything that we do moving forward. Um, because not only did COVID-19 bring the end the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the protests, bring forth the notion that racism still exists and that it is hurting a certain group of people, which are African Americans. We've been suffering for 400 years as all marginalized groups have been, because we're products of capitalism and colonialism and the effects of it. However, we are still today the most impacted because of systemic racism. That is a part of our policies, and it's a part of our behavior. It's a part of our ideology. It's a part of our lives. And we don't understand the influences. Well, we are understanding it now more than ever, that people are dying, and they're dying because of health, having less access to health care, because we're in less infrastructured areas. We haven't been availed or given the opportunities in an equitable way, the way that our policies have been designed into building an American dream. And if we did take part in it, we look at Katrina, we see the impacts of all of the hurricanes, and who are the persons that are most affected? They're African Americans and brown people. But most importantly, right now, in this particular time, it's African Americans, and the attention is on African Americans. Black Lives Matter, because we're dying, we're being mistreated, we're not having access to a healthy lifestyle that we're entitled to as a human being. And so, what better time than this, when the world sees what's happening, that we are able to rectify that wrong in a just oriented matter and shape and form. So, when we talk about I can't breathe, George Floyd, and Analia talking about she can't breathe because of asthma, I'll tell you, I didn't want to admit that I had asthma. I wanted to say it was an allergy. But that's the way that it's been characterized. But yes, I don't have asthma every day. But when I go outside, and when, in particular, when right after the George Floyd murders and the protests, they were using tear gas to control the crowds. People don't realize that those particulate matters and pollutants are in the air. They're around us. And so when I went outside and I couldn't breathe, I really couldn't breathe. And that's when I had to get my inhaler. And that's when I had to realize that that allergy was really asthma. And it's because of what's happening in the world, and being close to hazardous waste factories that have no concern for communities where we live. people in low wealth neighborhoods, they get up every day in protests because we are the essential workers. We have to go out and we have to work. We have to wear the mask every day. We have to be, we're more prone to the COVID-19 than anyone who can be safe inside their home with an air purifier that they can afford, and even in air conditioning. Ayala brought out that in Oakland, California, it's really hot. It's like 90 degrees. And at nighttime, it's even 90 degrees. So when we look at these real realities of what's happening in our world and the people that are being most affected, and you're seeing it in front of and right in your face, what better time than to take action and recognizing that there is a wrong, and in particular for African Americans for 400 years, we've been asking and we have been patient, and it is time now for a reckoning and a time for reparations in an inclusive, equitable way, moving us forward into the future. But might I say, don't be afraid of the Black Lives Matter. Embrace it because it's a part of you. What affects me is affecting you. And we're all in this together. And so we are all trying to heal, but it is time for us to be focused on bringing forward Black lives, that they matter, that we are entitled as humans to move forward in an equitable world.
Right. Thank you so much. I guess my next question, kind of relating to that, is there a way, or like what are some of the ways that non-Black people can lift up those voices and kind of be good allies as people talk about environmental justice or in general this movement?
Yeah, this is a question that YBA gets asked a lot. I feel like when organizing, if you are an organizer or just going to an event, um, you know, uplifting voices, Black voices is really important. But I find, speaking for them and assuming things and saying, well, this is happening and that's blah, blah, blah. Um, it can be helpful at times, but also it's been happening for centuries. People have been speaking for Black people for centuries, and really just passing the mic to a Black person so like you can understand the struggles of a Black person, I feel like is really important. And so I guess not speaking for marginalized communities, but it's like giving them a platform to speak and make sure you're including them and organizing and events and everything like that. And so I think just passing the mic and, looking at yourself and looking like where you place in the Black Lives Matter movement, and also looking where you place in society in general, and just how you can use that place and use whatever privilege you have to really uplift the voices of Black Indigenous people.
I totally agree. I believe that, and what the Climate Reality Project is really bringing forth, along with the Poor People's Campaign, is bringing marginalized communities to the forefront. And that is Black people, brown people, all people of color, and allowing their voice to be heard first. And let me just give you an example. In Atlanta, Georgia, was our real first environmental justice training for the Climate Reality Project. And as a mentor, we had our briefings early in the morning. And one of the greatest announcements that morning at 7 o'clock was that if there's a person of color from a marginalized community in your group, you always allow, we were instructed to always allow them to be the first to talk, the first for everything. Whether someone raised their hands first, they were first. And I felt so comfortable and so relieved. And I know that, that feeling of not always having to be the person in the back of the room or have to wait or I have to go in front of the room so that I can be noticed. I was immediately noticed because I was instructed to be noticed immediately. And that just brought a sense of relief. And so I could only imagine how, and let's bring it out. Environmental justice organizations have been happening and going on, and the movement's been happening for a while, but they haven't been recognized and they haven't been taken seriously. They've been underfunded. And I'm not, I haven't been as long as where the environmental justice principles came out in 1991, but I'm coming in just like everyone else who should come in, who has a stake in wanting a better life, neighborhood, and community for us all, because we're all a part of it. It doesn't require that, and I always say this, and it's most importantly, this is an individual decision that you make. It's a decision that you take on because you want to serve for the greater good of all. It shouldn't be that you come in and you recognize that there's something that has happened in particular to African Americans that I want to, I just have to get in, but I also want to get in and I want them to teach me what's going on with them. There's text for that. We've evolved history. We know it. There's articles. We're on a digital platform now, communication, information, highway. It's all there for your disposal. But you have to process that yourself in your understanding of learning and come with an understanding that even in that process of learning, you're going to be learning in this movement as well. And so with that, what I have done and will continue to do, I did create the Climate Justice Salon series with the purpose and mission of goals is to bring environmental justice organizations and community organizers to a platform. And that platform is the Climate Justice Salon series. Well, with COVID-19, everything is virtual like we are today. So it makes it a lot easier. But that is my goal with the purpose and intent to fortify and educate our membership, our public, of who these organizations are and what they've been doing and why they're so important and why they're taking center stage on this platform, because there's a divide. There's a divide of the environmentalists that have been moving forward, who have had money, who have been coined as white privileged. And then there are environmental justice movement and organization and people who've been out there who haven't been funded, but have the strong voice and have the solutions that are now very important to the movement because they know better than anyone coming down to speak down and to tell them what they should be doing. They're now coming forward to say, this is what we've been doing for 20 years. This is what we've been doing for 30 years. This is what we've been doing for 40 years. And nothing has changed. And so now you need to listen. And so that the platform, the climate justice platform, gives them that voice to speak real. It gives them a space where they can talk and be who they are and let people know what they're doing. And in that space is that process. And in that space is that healing circle and space for everyone. For those of us who haven't been afforded the opportunity to see or even to be granted in knowing what these organizations and people are doing, here's the platform for it. Just like today, this platform that you've created for us today, Ellen, is creating a space in particular. And for me, I like to bring, most importantly, people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color to that platform so that people can see and engage and take place and take shape of the process of what that healing is all about. And that just gets back to how I felt that morning in my brief as a mentor. And I was instructed, no matter what, I don't care if it's a white person or a black person, I mean, a white person that raises their hand first, a person of privilege, the person of color should always be the first to be acknowledged, and their question or answer or concern be acknowledged. It felt really good.
All right, thank you. And this is kind of a question from the chat, specifically for Anaya. What are some ways that, like, as high schoolers, we can help support this movement, help raise up these voices of color, and kind of emphasize what is being said in this kind of current climate?
Yes, if you are a high schooler who organizes, making sure that you're inviting people of color to come speak, Black and Indigenous communities to come speak, and like if you're doing an in-person event, always make sure to do a land acknowledgement because making sure that we're recognizing that we're on Native land and Indigenous land is really important for me and for YVA. And so just doing that, and also passing the mic like what I said before, but also I guess taking time to really think and recognize the differences between you and other people and the different struggles you have, and saying that's okay, but also doing something to change about it, and making change and also helping others make change. And like if you see that a community is not as well heard as you are, making sure that like you're kind of helping give a platform and give pass the mic to them so they can get their voices heard too.
Right, thank you. And kind of adding on to that or jumping off of that, is there any particular way that adults can help support these voices that you're mentioning through IVA, kind of these youth of color, just their voices and their ideas?
Yeah, why they take this very seriously. I think just being an ally and being there for support, because as a youth organizer, we have school online, which has been very different from school in person. And so I guess just if you are an adult organizer, making sure that you're recognizing that we have school, we have things like this, and we are organizing, and just making sure that you're kind of thinking of a person of youth as doing a lot of different jobs at one time. And so just making sure that you give a little space for them to take self-care time yourself, and also just, become an ally and listen. Listen is a very important thing, and to try not to speak over and to listen to people's ideas and to be open, because we are going through different things as youth and adults. And so just trying to understand and have empathy for that is really important.
Right, yeah, thank you so much. This is another question from the chat. It's for both of you. The question is, would you say that the media accurately portrays people fighting for environmental justice or this movement in general? And if not, is there anything that you think is different or should be changed in how like this movement is addressed or referred to?
Anaya?
Sorry. Yeah, I feel like there has been a lot of controversy about how the media portrays, you know, the climate justice movement and the social justice movement. And so there have been improvements, but also I feel like a lot of the stuff has been portrayed by white led, and so some of the stuff like we've done, it's been organized by people of color. It's been just all these things been done by people of color, and then on the media you see a white face, and just sometimes it can just kind of hit different. And so I think the media does this because I don't know. To be honest, I don't know why the media does this, but I feel like a lot of changes have to be made because Black and Indigenous communities have been fighting against change for years now, for decades. And so I feel like it's very important to portray this because it can be a huge platform for those communities and for those organizers, and they can use that platform to really uplift what they're saying and to get others heard, and to also stop having this stereotype of the climate justice movement as being like a white led save the turtles, stop using plastic type of thing, because it was that about 20 years ago, but now it's really a movement of survivement and really, fighting for our lives. And so I feel like that's really important to understand. And that's something the media has really done.
Well, I agree with you, Anaya. The media and our institutions of power have, and in particular, most of our media creates the imagery of what they want the world to see. And we have been stereotyped within the media of, to be afraid of, and those other people, othered, quote unquote, which has led to the demise of relationships in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and they've been motivated with fear. And so if you're looking at television all day and it is continuously feeding you fear, then when you go outside the door, you're fearful. So we, as people of color, um, we've been portrayed as something that's other and something that is not good, something that is bad. And so when you look at Black Lives Movement and what they're saying, oh, defund the police. Oh, they're going to revolt. It's going to be a protest. This is just a part of what the movement is, and what they have seen historically is that, yeah, we have a protest and then we get money and it's a band-aid solution, and then there's another protest because there's a big issue. Well, that's not the truth. The truth is that the Black Lives Movement, and even with the defund the police, it's not defunding the police to create havoc and to be afraid. It's saying, recognize that we need to do something with our police system. Let's restructure it, because the structure, the current structure is creating it's impacting a community, in particular Black men. They're going to jail. And why is that? Because you're afraid, they're Black, they're the others. And this all is rooted back in the history of slavery. And that's a whole different, program. But recognizing that media definitely is creating a perception and stereotype. And what that is the first place that one must begin to understand what that looks like. What is the stereotype? What is the image that's being created? And in that, use your critical consciousness from that intersectionality, race, gender, and class. Why is this happening? And question, is that really true? Because my friend that I'm sitting next to me right now is Black, but she's not that way. And I have other people who are not living that way. And so with that, you begin to, you begin to understand yourself by questioning the status quo, that Black people are really not that bad, and the Black Lives Matter is not that bad, and that it's just a quest for people to acknowledge of an injustice that's happening and it's killing people. And so now change that narrative, change the media, in helping us to see us in a different light. So not to be afraid, but to use your critical consciousness, questioning the status quo of, why is it always this way? Something has to be wrong if it's only one image that I'm seeing. Let me open up my mind and looking at race, gender, and class, and looking at the beauty, as Anaya said, looking at the beauty of first acknowledging the land that we stand on, the indigenous people, looking at the African Americans who came and built the land, Look at the Asians who build our railroad systems, and all of the contributions that have been made by people who have been oppressed only because of capitalism, and capitalism pushing an ideology of white privilege.
Right. And another question that kind of is stemming off of this that I believe was also asked in the chat is because there are these inequalities in how people are portrayed in the media, is there anything that we can do as allies to kind of help push towards a better narrative of like actually showing everyone who's doing the work behind these climate change efforts and everything like that? Yeah.
Yes, Naya?
Sorry, I was just want to wait if you want to speak.
No,
But
I'll go first.
yeah, I feel like this as if you're not a person that like doesn't really like if you're not a photographer or like an introvert or something, and if you're just an adult ally, I feel like if you are doing an interview or you see that your picture is taken or something like that, you
Mhm.
know, give credits to the organizers, like make sure, well, yes, I was here to do this, but also these are the people that organized it. These are the people that put their time and energy into it. And so I feel like just giving credit to the organizers is very important. And then if you are a person who's a photographer or just a person that does interviews, making sure that you know you're looking for the people of color and the people of color who are organizers and activists because we really want to give them credit because you know we haven't gotten credit for you know years now, and so I feel like especially right now is really important to do that.
Right.
And I agree. For those of us, everyone has a camera now. Um, Look and open yourself up to something that's new and amazing. You know, Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, right? So if we're taking the same pictures that are depressing, that are showing the injustice, we keep doing the same thing over and over, right? But now we need to start taking pictures of change, that things are really evolving, that there are, as you know, a lot of people think that all of the protests are all African Americans out there tearing the streets down. Well, we know that that's not the case. We know that there are other people who are coming, who are white, who are coming and participating in these acts of destruction. So take pictures of that if you want something on that and say, no, that's not a Black person doing that. That's someone else that may be from another community. But also start taking pictures of the beauty that you see. If you're in a movement and you're standing next to someone you've never stood next to before, and you are both working together for a common goal, and that is climate change, take a picture of that. Take a picture of a good, nice act, because we need more positive acts so that people can see that there is some greatness that's happening in all of this chaos. And so we have to change the narrative. Everyone, as Anaya said, take your phones out. And I say, stop listening and thinking that everything that you see, it is real and it is true, but it's only one stream of information. And look at that and question, why is it one stream of information that's coming in to create a stereotype of something that's going on when there's other great things going on, like with me in the environmental cohort, and we're having processes of talking about AB 617 with my leaders and people and peers, those kinds of pictures of people coming together, even in their lack of understanding or in their madness and being upset, but taking place, that process is happening. But what also is most important is that you have to, this is a self actualization process that we all have to go through. I go through it and understanding more about being an African American and what that means. And so, in that process, come some creative ideas and to open yourself to creative ideas of a better world that we can take shape and stand in that on your own and not depend on anyone to shape it for you, but for you to bring it out and to get away from the fear of it, because in that comes some great creative ideas. And that's where the creativity and drive of moving towards a more equitable and better world will happen, because you'll question and you'll want to look for the good instead of the bad.
Thank you so much. Here's one more question from the chat. What would you say to people who are quote unquote tired and are of the Black Lives Matter movement, or kind of just want to move on with their lives, as they're saying?
Yeah, if you, I feel like I'm going to be completely honest. If you feel that way, you're sort of part of the problem, because it's like if you're tired of this movement, imagine how Black people feel. They're tired of their people being killed in the streets. They're tired of being deprived from equal education. They're tired of not being, having the same access to medical care, and just tired of, these systems of oppression just keeping us silent and trying to prevent us from thriving as a community. And so I feel like if you're, tired of the Black Lives Matter movement, you need really to, look at yourself and reflect on that idea, and just like have empathy for the people that have lost their lives to, you know, this whole system and the government, because, it's really not only about police brutality, it's really about all systems of oppression that are really killing Black people as a community, and, keeping us from thriving as a community. And so I just feel like looking at yourself and, reflecting on that idea and trying to, I guess, figure out a way to, understand what Black people have gone through for centuries now in this country, and just really have empathy. And yeah, I feel like empathy is a huge part of it.
Yes, I agree. Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a part of the civil rights movement, said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And I know, as an African American woman out here in the trenches, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I know how it is. But I also know that in this, the truth will make you sick and tired, because you got to process what that sick and tired is, because it's multiple layers. However, we're humans and we do have a life and we have to go on. And in that, I advocate for self-care. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to be able to disconnect yourself from what those harsh realities are and go do something for yourself, because you're not going to be able to continue to stand without taking care of yourself. And that is if you have to go for a walk, or just disconnect from your cell phones, from your social media platforms, from the television, from whatever you're doing. And even if it requires going hiking in nature, if it's just sitting and meditating, and however long that takes, if it takes 1, 2 days or 3, it may take 1 or 2 weeks. Sometimes I have been to where I have to disconnect myself for almost a week to rejuvenate myself in the beauty of who I am, because fighting systemic racism and oppression is daunting and it's exhausting. And so that's the major point that I want to bring out, is that, yes, we're talking about the realities of oppression and people, in particular, African Americans, people of color, Indigenous people. And yes, we're tired, but we also have to live a life, and we're trying to live a life so that we can be healthy and whole. But it requires, in a movement, when I'm not able and I need to go take a rest, I want to be able to lean on Aniya or Ellen and say, you know what, you guys got to take this right now, because I need to pull back, rejuvenate myself, love myself, because we haven't been taught to love ourselves because we've been fighting for so long. And here we are even today saying we're free, but we really aren't free. But, and we are free, we're moving towards freedom, but freedom is really taking care of yourself in this, but not giving up. And so that's a healthy response for us in this movement, that we have to take care of ourselves, our well-being, and we have to be able to lean on our other comrades who are in the movement, and then also give them the space that they need and recognize when they need that space to give it. But the movement keeps going on until we really start seeing change. And that's the only way. We have to keep moving and keep that cycle going on. But you have to take care of yourself, and you have to love yourself in this. And even as you are learning more about systemic racism, oppression, you still have to pull back and love yourself enough to say, okay, I understand. I am tired too. Let me take a break, but I'm coming back. That doesn't mean that you say, okay, I went through it, that's enough, and I'm done. That's just not going to happen. You got to get back up. It's just like with your studies, something that is hard or something that you're studying, you might get tired of studying it. And what do they always tell you? Take a break and then come back with a refreshed mind, with refreshed energy and perspective, so that you can give your very best. And then when it is time and recognizing, pull back. But I got Ellen and I got Anaya who's out there, and I know that they're working in the process and we're moving forward towards change.
Great, thank you. And just like a kind of final question, I know that we're very close to 11, but to you, what would a just transition and kind of an environmentally just society look like in the future?
Yeah, definitely climate change free. But I think for the process there, dismantling all systems of oppression is really crucial to have a just transition because, our world has literally been founded on the genocide of indigenous people, the kidnapping and enslavement of, African and American and Black people, and, just the burglary of native land. And so I feel like recognizing that and see how it's really, created a culture of oppression and white supremacy and capitalism and all these systems of oppression, which are fueling, climate change and social injustice is really important. And so that's why these two movements are so intersectional because they have both been created and, fueled by the same systems of oppression. And so I feel like, dismantling the systems and really kind of re reconstructing a new different type of a system that really helps everyone and benefits everyone is really important in order for a just transition, because in order to make a just transition we are going to have to make a lot of crucial changes from our day-to-day lives, and just think about that and how hard it's going to be. In order to do that we need to be resilient, and we need to have unity within us. And so to do that we just really have to dismantle these systems and start to move on and make the just transition.
Well, I keep saying no matter what, we're moving forward. And moving forward is one, recognizing Black Lives Matter, 400 years, and we're still at the point of we're still being excluded. So recognizing that that is an integral part of this whole new world and transition and just transition that we're moving towards. The just transition is that it has to be equitable. We know that we have to get off greenhouse emissions. We're here in California. 2 years from now, we're going to be all electric cars. So that we've got to start. That's a transition, right? So that means that your parents are going to have to get all new electric cars. They're going to have electric stations. And so you'll start seeing all of that happening. But we'll also go to more solar energy, but making sure that marginalized communities that have been historically and institutionally denied access into these new green economies moving forward, that they're the first persons to benefit, that they're the first persons that will be able to participate in the jobs that will be created, that they will be an active forefront leader in transitioning and helping the transition into a green economy, that they're given jobs, that they're given opportunities for jobs so that they can buy homes, so that they can have clean and safe environments for their children, for their neighborhoods. They have access to healthcare. They have to be a part of that equation, because we are going to a green, clean, solar energy world. And so if we don't bring marginalized communities, in particular African Americans, along with us, it's going to be more devastation. And so equity is a major part of the equation of what justice is. We've got to change our policies. We got to change our laws. And we need people in leadership who are devising them, who understands what we're talking about today, systemic racism, and how it has taken shape and form, and having that lens of equity with that knowledge base, and saying, we've got to make sure that African Americans get the jobs for the contracts that will be a part of green building. That's a part of what I'm interested in. And so as young budding professionals, some of you will be engineers, you guys will be in energy, you will be in building. So how will that look? And so they'll be a part of that as well, but you'll be the young youth who will be devising the policies. But you have to have that lens, and not forgetting that there are a group of people that have been affected by climate change that they did not create and that they did not devise. And so we need to bring them into the equation so that we can all breathe together.
Great. Thank you so much. I know that we're going a bit over, so I just want to say thank you to both of you, Anaya and Teron, and to all of the leads at YCA, because they helped me a lot with running and like setting up this program, and including today. And for everyone, of course, who showed up today and watched and tried to learn more, I think that it's very important for us to continue trying to listen to others and learn from each other. And I wanted to give kind of a reminder to everyone to fill out the survey that was linked in the chat, I believe, just now. Because if you want to be entered into the raffle to win the Hydro Flask water bottle, I believe, that will be how you do that. And I also wanted to remind everyone that the next panel in this series will be next week on October 24th at the same time from 10 to 11 a.m. And that panel will focus on the future impacts of climate change, both as it relates to the environment and also as it relates to how climate change will affect people, both our generation and the generations to come. And with that, Teron and Anaya, if either of you guys have any closing remarks, words of advice, or things that you wanted to leave the audience with, yeah.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for having me here. And Youth versus Apocalypse is launching our national campaign. This is the time on Monday. So please go sign the pledge. The link to that is thisisthetime.org. Hopefully that will be linked in the chat. We're also dropping our new music video, This Is the Time, which will feature a lot of different artists from Youth versus Apocalypse, including myself as a spoken word artist on there. And so please go watch that video, tell us your opinions, and make sure to repost it on social media. And just thank you for being here. And I hope you guys, learned a lot about the different effects of climate change and intersectional of it, and then just, how to organize and be an activist.
Hey. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Ellen, for organizing this. And thank you, Aniya, for your wonderful perspective. I'm learning from you, and that's what it takes. And this is the very beginning of that whole learning process that we all have to engage in and not to be afraid of. But Ellen, you taking the chance of going out and creating your platform is the same kind of platform that we all have to take in our advocacy, in our engagement, in changing and bringing frontline communities to the climate change and climate justice movement. Please go to the Climate Reality Project. I like to say that we have leadership. We train leaders, and that's what I've been doing. So we just finished trainings global trainings, where we trained over 14,000 people, and we need more youth to come in and be a part of this movement. It is an open opportunity, and I look forward to working with all of you. But thank you for this space and creating this space, this important space. And it's been an honor, and I'm very humbled by the experience.
Yeah, thank you both once again for all of your insight. And I think that this was a great panel. And I hope that everyone was able to learn something from it and kind of hear this perspective as well. And thank you so much once again for everyone who came. And I hope to see you next week for our second panel.